night of August 20th, 1989, in the affluent neighborhood of Beverly Hills, California, a chilling series of events unfolded that would captivate and horrify the nation for decades to come. Inside a sprawling Mediterranean-style mansion, Jose and Kitty Menendez, a wealthy and seemingly picture-perfect couple, were brutally gunned down in their living room. The scene was one of unimaginable carnage. Jose, a self-made millionaire and entertainment executive, was slumped on the couch, his body riddled with shotgun blasts. Kitty, his wife of over 25 years, lay sprawled on the floor, her face unrecognizable from the close-range shots that had obliterated her features. It was a crime of such ferocity and precision that it seemed like the work of professional hitmen. But as investigators would soon discover, the truth was far more shocking. The 911 call came in at 11:47 p.m. It was Lyle Menendez, the couple's 21-year-old son, his voice trembling with panic. "Someone killed my parents," he screamed. In the background, his younger brother, 18-year-old Eric, could be heard sobbing uncontrollably. The brothers told police they had been out that evening, attending a movie and then going to a local festival. When they returned home, they claimed to have stumbled upon the grisly aftermath of the murders. Their anguish appeared genuine, their grief palpable. But as the days turned into weeks, cracks began to form in their story, and the facade of the grieving sons began to unravel. At first, the Beverly Hills Police Department had no reason to suspect Lyle and Eric. The Menendez family was wealthy, well-connected, and seemingly untouchable. Jose Menendez had built an empire in the entertainment industry, working his way up from humble beginnings in Cuba to become a high-powered executive. Kitty, a former beauty queen, had dedicated her life to raising their two sons in the lap of luxury. The Menendez brothers were the epitome of privilege. Lyle attended Princeton University, while Eric was a promising tennis player with dreams of going professional. To the outside world, they were the perfect family. But behind closed doors, the Menendez household was a pressure cooker of dysfunction, secrets, and simmering resentment. In the weeks following the murders of their parents, Lyle and Eric Menendez began behaving in a way that raised suspicions, not just among investigators, but also within their own social circles. Instead of retreating into grief or mourning the loss of their parents, the brothers embarked on an extravagant spending spree that seemed more fitting for lottery winners than grieving sons. They wasted no time accessing their parents' fortune, which was estimated to be over $14 million, and their actions appeared almost celebratory. Lyle, the older of the two, purchased a $64,000 Porsche and began frequenting high-end restaurants, flaunting his newfound wealth. Eric, meanwhile, hired a personal tennis coach and began competing in professional tournaments, a dream he had long harbored but could now afford to pursue without limitations. Together, the brothers invested $700,000 in a restaurant business, seemingly eager to establish themselves as entrepreneurs. Their spending wasn't limited to material goods. They moved into luxury condos in Marina del Rey, throwing lavish parties and surrounding themselves with new friends who were dazzled by their wealth. They bought Rolex watches, designer clothes, and expensive jewelry, displaying their opulence without a hint of restraint. To those who knew them, their behavior seemed disconnected from the tragedy they had just endured. Instead of being consumed by grief, they appeared to be reveling in their newfound freedom and financial independence. What made their actions even more suspicious was their lack of interest in the ongoing police investigation. They didn't press for updates or demand justice for their parents, which struck many as odd. Their demeanor during interviews with police was calm, almost detached, and their alibis for the night of the murders, attending a movie and a local festival, were quickly accepted without question. But as their spending continued to spiral out of control, it became harder to ignore the glaring contradiction between their public behavior and the gravity of the crime they claimed to be grieving. Investigators began to wonder, were these the actions of traumatized sons or cold-blooded killers who had just gotten away with murder? The turning point came 6 months after the murders, when Eric, overwhelmed by guilt and paranoia, confessed to the crime during a therapy session with Dr. Jerome Oziel. Eric's admission was not a moment of bravery or redemption. It was a desperate act by a young man crumbling under the weight of his secret. The confession wasn't just a bombshell revelation. It was the key that would unravel the brothers' carefully constructed alibi and expose the chilling truth behind the murders. But what made Eric's confession even more shocking was the level of detail he provided about how he and Lyle had meticulously planned their parents' deaths. According to Eric, the planning began weeks before the murders. The brothers had grown increasingly resentful of their father, Jose, whom they described as a tyrannical figure who controlled every aspect of their lives. They claimed they lived in constant fear of his wrath and had reached a breaking point. They decided the only way to escape their father's control and gain access to the family fortune was to kill both Jose and Kitty. The plan was cold, calculated, and methodical. They researched how to purchase firearms without raising suspicion, eventually buying two 12-gauge shotguns from a Big Five sporting goods store in San Diego. To avoid leaving a paper trail, they paid in cash and used fake IDs. In the days leading up to the murders, the brothers rehearsed their plan repeatedly. They scouted their home, identifying the living room as the ideal location for the attack because it provided limited escape routes. They studied the layout of the house and practiced moving quietly to avoid alerting their parents. On the night of August 20th, 1989, they waited until their parents were settled in the living room, watching television. Armed with the shotguns, they entered the room and executed their plan with chilling precision. Lyle fired the first shot, killing Jose instantly. Kitty, startled and terrified, tried to flee, but the brothers pursued her, firing multiple rounds until she collapsed. The brutality of the attack left no doubt that this was a premeditated act of violence. Eric's confession to Dr. Oziel revealed not only the depths of their desperation, but also the terrifying lengths they were willing to go to achieve their freedom. Dr. Oziel, fearing for his own safety, recorded Eric's confessions and confided in his mistress, Judalon Smythe, who later went to the police. Armed with this explosive information, investigators obtained a warrant to search the brothers' belongings. Investigators were initially puzzled by the lack of physical evidence tying Lyle and Eric Menendez to the murders. However, as their behavior and spending raised suspicions, detectives began to dig deeper into their movements and financial transactions in the weeks leading up to and after the killings. A significant breakthrough came when investigators discovered receipts for the murder weapons, two 12-gauge shotguns, purchased just days before Jose and Kitty Menendez were killed. The receipts were found among the brothers' belongings during a search of their home, and further investigation revealed that the shotguns had been purchased from a Big Five sporting goods store in San Diego. The purchase itself was carefully planned. The brothers had used fake IDs to avoid linking the transaction to their real names, and they paid in cash to eliminate a paper trail. Despite their efforts to cover their tracks, the store's records, combined with witness testimony from the clerk who sold them the firearms, provided a direct connection between the brothers and the murder weapons. Ballistics testing further confirmed that the shotguns used in the crime matched the casings and pellets found at the scene. This damning evidence, coupled with Eric's confession, painted a clear picture of premeditation and sealed their fate in the eyes of investigators. In March 1990, Lyle and Eric were arrested and charged with first-degree murder. The trial that followed was a media circus, drawing comparisons to the O.J. Simpson case in its sheer spectacle. The prosecution painted the brothers as cold-blooded killers motivated by greed. They argued that Lyle and Eric had grown tired of living under their father's strict rules and had decided to kill their parents to inherit the family fortune, estimated at over $14 million. The defense, however, presented a vastly different narrative, one that would shock the nation and divide public opinion. Lyle and Eric claimed they had killed their parents in self-defense after years of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse at the hands of their father. They described Jose as a tyrant who ruled the household with an iron fist, subjecting them to relentless pressure to succeed while belittling and humiliating them at every turn. Eric testified that Jose had sexually abused him from the age of 6, forcing him to perform unspeakable acts and threatening to kill him if he ever told anyone. Kitty, they claimed, was complicit in the abuse. turning a blind eye to her husband's actions and lashing out at the boys in fits of rage fueled by alcohol and prescription pills. The brothers' testimony was harrowing, and their tears on the witness stand appeared genuine. For many, it was difficult to reconcile the image of the privileged Menendez brothers with the horrors they described, but the prosecution argued that their claims of abuse were fabricated, a desperate attempt to avoid the death penalty. They pointed to the brothers' lavish spending after the murders as evidence of their true motivations, portraying them as spoiled, entitled brats who had killed out of greed, not fear. The trial ended in a deadlock, with the jury unable to reach a unanimous verdict. A second trial was held in 1995, and this time the brothers were convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The verdict was met with mixed reactions. Some saw it as justice served, while others believed the brothers were victims in their own right, pushed to the breaking point by years of abuse. In the years since their conviction, the Menendez brothers have remained in the public eye, their case the subject of countless documentaries, books, and true crime podcasts. In 2017, they were reunited in the same prison after spending over 2 decades apart. Their story continues to fascinate and divide, a chilling reminder of how even the most privileged lives can be shattered by darkness and despair. The question that lingers is not just why they did it, but whether the cycle of abuse and violence could have been broken before it ended in bloodshed. We will never know.